Hello and welcome back to the Battle Frontier podcast, where we aim to help you level up in your journey as a competitive Pokemon TCG player. I'm Aaron Curry. Here with me, as always, or mostly always, is my co-host John Orgel. And this week, we're going to talk about some rules updates, or the lack thereof, with the Pokemon TCG, or at least the announcement of some rules updates. Before we also just talk about how we feel some of those changes would actually affect the game, and for the ones that haven't been fully revealed yet, what we would like to see come out of those changes and whether or not we actually think they'll do anything to change the game overall. Then we'll revisit everyone's favorite segment of the show, Blaine's quiz show, before we get into some Toronto meta discussion ahead of the first regional of the new year. So before we jump into all of that, John, I do know we missed last week's episode due to me having to take my wife to the hospital for some pregnancy related things. Thankfully, everybody's okay. So we're back. We're here. We're doing what we were going to do last week this week, and we have a little bit more information than we did then. So it probably worked out all for the best, right?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully there wasn't a whole lot that happened in the interim. I'm glad your family is doing all right. It can be stressful and
Yeah.
scary, so I'm glad everything's on the course for a healthy pregnancy, which is great. But yeah, it's exciting times. We're finally getting back into the tournament swing of things, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
Anything new happened for you Pokemon wise in the last week? You get up to anything fun or
Um,
fancy?
Pokemon wise, we so since I last talked, I think we did our benefit charity tournament that I
Yeah.
talked about the last time we had a podcast. That went pretty well. We had like a fundraising goal of $1,000. I think we hit like $2,300
Nice.
for suicide prevention and awareness. So that was really good. We had like 54 players show up for our TCG tournament, which was pretty great. I mean, that's considering Richmond, like the cups I run, I usually get 20 to 30. That's a pretty good turnout. So, I mean, I know it's like not Florida numbers or Georgia
No, that's
numbers
really
or,
good.
some of those. Yeah, I was happy with that. And, Jacob's excited to kind of keep it going. And it's cool to see something like that stand the test of time. It's easy to, like, once people forget who the guy that passed away
Mm-hmm.
is, once people are like, who's Carter, then it can kind of really sink or swim based on the people that are putting it on. So that was exciting. Yeah, I don't like. I think I have. It's been pretty quiet as far as other Pokemon stuff going on. I tried doing the Lorcana regionals in Richmond
Okay.
last week. Uh, I'm an idiot, and like I don't know. I'm used to Pokemon, I guess, where you can just roll up and get a spectator badge the day of.
Oh.
And they were completely sold out when I went there. So that was frustrating. It's only I only might have myself to blame, but yeah, I was like I had a friend in town, a couple of friends in town from North Carolina that I wanted to like say hi to and like walk around and check on some of our local players like Ian, who is part of our podcast family, I guess, and one of the locals for Pokemon. He got me into Lorcana a little bit. Was going to let me borrow a deck and play, but I wasn't able to participate in anything. So I just ended up kind of having a chill Saturday and then Sunday this past week. Lots of
Mm-hmm.
football, including my Buffalo Bills pulling out an insane game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which, I had no doubt, but at the same time, I was constantly in doubt of the end result of that match. It's being a Bills fan, man. It'll age you like smoking cigars and hard liquor. Like it's no joke, man. I lost my like I yelled a little too loud at the end. There was like the game winning or game sealing, I guess, interception. I screamed so hard that my voice kind of fell out for a
Oh,
couple
geez.
like the rest of the day. So that was exciting. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being close to Buffalo this weekend. Unfortunately, in Toronto, they're playing at 4:30 on Saturday,
Oh, so
and
there's
there's
no
no
way
way in
you'll see
time.
the
There's
game.
there's no way I can watch the game. No, hopefully I can like sneak peeks at the score or something like that. But yeah, I have a role to do. I'll be a TCG floor judge, and I am happy to announce that I'll be also a stream judge
Oh,
this
nice.
weekend. So I'm excited to do that. Yep, it's fun. They're doing a little bit different this time. They're having a stream, like a usually you have your AHJ, like you have 8 different AHJs or something like that, and then one person from each team like it's like one AHJ and then 8 judges beneath them, and then one person from that would be on stream
Okay.
duty, and would basically like spend a third of the matches going up on stream, and then a third of them spotting, and then a third back on the floor with their team. This regional, excuse me, this regional they're doing a little differently. They're going to have just a stream team like dedicated to stream judging, and so you'll have the AHJ and all the other judges on that team are all stream judges. And I don't really know exactly what that means. I don't know like if we'll still be doing any floor coverage, maybe in the early rounds because we don't really start the stream until round 4. We'll be floating or helping out, and then yeah, I don't really know what beyond that. So I'm excited to see how that looks, and how I think it's kind of like similar to how Europe's done it the last few like for a while now. So it's North America taking that on. So that'll be an interesting way to kind of see how that works for everybody. But yeah, I'm excited about that. And yeah, I'm excited to be going up to Toronto in a couple days
Yeah.
now. So probably by the release day, I'll be up in the Great
Good
White
luck with the
North.
weather.
So
I
yeah,
It's supposed to be cold this weekend.
Yeah, it's gonna, dude. It is like the high I think is like 20 something or something.
Yeah.
Friday. It's below freezing the whole time pretty much. So I'm gonna have to, and it's like my dumb self brought, sprung for the budget option where I only get a backpack. So I'm gonna be like carrying my winter coat on the plane or wearing it and then like layering up on the plane. So
have fun with that.
It'll be all right. Yeah, thankfully the nice thing is I'm flying into Billy Bishop Airport, which is Toronto City Airport. And literally I can I'm like 2 blocks from the airport to the convention center.
Oh, wow.
And another block from the convention center to our hotel. And I think the convention center and the hotel are connected by a bridge, or I don't have to go that far outside.
If it's the hotel I'm thinking of, then yes, it definitely is connected.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll have to look it up, but yeah, I'm excited that that's an option. And there's also a train museum that I'll probably go to on Friday or Thursday. So we'll find something fun to do on Thursday. Yeah, it'll
for
be
anybody else that's going up this weekend. If you have never been to Toronto, it is definitely worth noting that they have a heated kind of underground pathway that you can take. That is also a mall of sorts, so you are able to get around without needing to be in the cold all the time. And yeah, definitely recommend that to anybody that's looking to do things. There's also like the train station that's kind of attached. Eventually you can walk to there from the convention center. And there is a whole like underground mall associated with that as well, with tons of food options. So highly recommend checking that out as well if you've never been. And it's just a fun city to visit. So they've got great food. Like go find something to eat somewhere. Like I don't know if you can find bad food. Just don't go to a chain restaurant.
Yeah, as long as you stick away from chain. But there's like a couple stops up on their bus, or like I think it's a tram line. Is like their college area, and there's lots of good like cheap options up there because I stayed up there last year or 2 years ago. But yeah, Toronto's a great city, great international city. Lots of good food, lots of good like things going on. This weekend will be a little bit chillier than I went. I think in October last time. So
no,
yeah,
they had it.
Definitely
They had it around this time of year, same time like for last season as well. It was in December, I think.
Yeah, last year was December, and then the year before that,
cold then too, man. So it's like the same thing. Like, why are we doing? I get why you do NAIC in the summer because that's just when you do NAIC. But New Orleans in the summer, Toronto in the winter, like we got to do something to mix things up here just a little bit. And just I don't know. There's got to be a better way. But weather aside, before we get into like just updates on my side of things, been playing a little bit more Pokemon on TCG Live, just trying to play other different decks and kind of prepare myself so that I can be educated enough to have an opinion when we're talking about the meta on the podcast. I tried to steer away from online tournament results and lists from the online tournaments because I feel like at some point, especially when you have a format that doesn't have any major event data influencing it, that it turns into an echo chamber eventually. And everything is just kind of revolving and consolidating around the established online meta, which I fully expect to not match what we'll see this weekend. Like some of the things here and there might be similar, but I think that there will be some pretty large deviations in comparison to some of the deck lists and, like deck percentages that we were seeing in those online events as well.
Yeah. I think that's a fair statement. Like you see the same names at a lot of the online tournaments, and they're always playing the same decks, and so it's a different metagame than it would be for an in-person event, and like a lot less carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into all that, I'm sure, in the talk of the meta for Toronto. So we won't spoil that quite yet. But yeah, Aaron, what you been up to? You said you've been playing on a TCG. Anything else? I know you had some a little bit of life stuff going on, but everything else pretty even keel
Yeah,
outside of that.
yeah. Just like on the TCG side of things, last week I begrudgingly had forced myself to play some Goldango games. This week I've been playing a little bit of Charizard and Terrabox, and as jaded as I was about the format previously, I still think that it's kind of just at the end of its life cycle right now, and that just is what it is. Like, there's nothing that's really going to shake things up. It just needs some of the old guard to exit for things to really be refreshed. But there are
Mm-hmm.
still ways to engage with the game and have fun. Like, there's a lot of the nice thing about the format. There's a lot of diverse options. A lot of things are viable, even if they aren't the top three decks. You can win games against those top three decks with pretty much anything right now. And I guess that would be kind of the hallmark, like the positive thing to look at with this format. But yeah, we'll talk about all of that a little bit more when we get into that metagame discussion in the latter half of the episode. The first thing we were going to talk about, though, was a tweet that was put out by Play Pokemon last week that stated that they were doing, part of their regular updates to all of the tournament handbooks, including the overall tournament handbook and then the game specific tournament handbooks for all the games being Go, TCG, VGC. And I think they actually, even though it's not listed here, I think that they did do an update to the Unite tournament handbook as well, even though that whole system has been fully overhauled for this season, where they've got something that's more similar to like the League of Legends, like professional circuit, where teams had to like win their way into the circuit, and now they're essentially locked in until they get relegated at some point later down the line. So their tournaments are just a whole different ballgame compared to everything else. But if we highlight the area that we're most interested in on this podcast with the TCG handbook, they stated that they were reinstating the turn tracker section, clarifying end of round processes for +1 turn rules, and added a new line item to the tempo of play table for deck search first of game. And unfortunately, none of these changes have actually happened yet. Because if you go to the Pokemon website and you pull up the TCG Rules Handbook, it's still on the edition that was put out in November of 2025. Or maybe it's October. Off the top of my head, I honestly don't remember.
I think it's
But
November.
last quarter of 2025. So that update has
Yeah.
not been put out yet. And they did clarify a few days after putting this tweet out that they put out a follow up tweet that said, hey, we'll introduce all of this information later this month. So, for all we know, that means that we won't hear about it till March. But hopefully, we'll hear about it in the next week or two, because I think that some of these things it can only be good as far as just having clarification, getting these updates out to people. It's nice that we don't just stick with something that's put out at the beginning of the season, that these rules can evolve and be updated as necessary, especially if something like, the big one, the one that everybody's been talking about, is the deck search first of game rule that is highlighted here
Mm-hmm.
that hasn't been put in yet. But if that information wasn't ready at the beginning of the season, and this has been just kind of a big pain point, and it gets really brought up with stream games more so, especially because those are so visible. Like, I know somebody did a whole breakdown of how long the first deck search of the game was for players in the World Championship finals for every single
Yeah.
Worlds that's ever been recorded. And this past season was like the most egregious, where both players were taking upwards of 3 or 4 minutes for their first turn as a result of their first deck search just being accepted as being this like crazy long thing, and everyone's just cool with it. Whereas, back in my day, if you weren't like done with your deck search in a timely manner, you were getting a judge called on you, and it, like, more than likely you were going to get some sort of warning, and then it would escalate if you continue to do that down the line. So I think what people are looking for here is just guidance on what is the upper limit, what is the ceiling that I can achieve with this first deck search. And the common opinion currently is, like, from what I understand, is like 90 seconds is generally considered acceptable. I personally
Yeah.
am not a fan of that. I still think that that could be too long of a time, but I've heard the counter argument where if we shorten it and make it say 30 seconds, 45 seconds, all that's going to do is transfer that time or shift that time further into the game. So what the example that I brought up was if I'm going second and I play an Arvin to start my turn and I know that I'm going to go find a buddy Poffin and a TM Evo as an example, but then I want to take the rest of the time to search for my deck and check my prize cards. So I go through and I start looking. Okay, I've hit 30 seconds. These are the two targets for my Arvin. I take my Poffin. Now I'm going to play my Poffin and take my full deck search time with my Poffin to continue to try to search things out. And then you play through the rest of your turn. You attach the TM Evo. You use Evolution. Now you take the full length of your deck search time for the TM Evo to further sort things out. Whereas with the like 90-second timer previously, a player would pick up their deck, and in some cases fully sort it, which that's a whole different discussion topic. I know that that's not allowed in Japan, and there's an argument for why it shouldn't be allowed anywhere. But at whatever mode they go through to sort through their deck and figure out what their prize cards are, they take the 90 seconds and then they do the Arvin, do the Poffin, do the TM Evo, and their turn's over. So realistically, the sum of the time utilized for all of those actions is the same in both scenarios. It's just front loaded in one and spaced out in the other one. And is it really like, I guess my question is, from a judging perspective or a player perspective, do you think it's actually going to change anything having this in the rulebook?
Um, I think it'll at least give judges a better foot to stand on for enforcing stuff. It all really comes down to that, to the fact that slow play will continue or get worse at the pace it is until it game tempo is enforced, until judges make it a point of emphasis and players know that there's a real risk of getting a penalty or potentially losing a game
Sure.
because of it. I mean, you go back and you brought up an interesting point talking about like the tempo. If you go back and look at games, like I looked at a VOD I had of a game I played with Mega Mewtwo Garbodor versus I forget what, I think it was like Mega Ray or something like that. Um, and it is crazy like how fast I'm playing like compared to how I played today. And I'm not saying that I couldn't get back to that point, but it was just like I was either more decisive or just more laissez-faire. Who knows? I don't know what my mind was like 10 years ago anymore. But it is fascinating to see like just how fast players played back in like 2014, 2015 versus today. Um, and I think that's a really interesting point is that we can get back to that point. Like, I think some games are, you have more game actions and more searching than you necessarily had back in the day. But I don't think that's entirely true. Like, there were still like decisions I had to make and energy attachments and evolving different Pokemon and stuff that wasn't necessarily intuitive. That was more thought, like you had to think a couple turns ahead or whatever. But you still like make a line of play and then kind of have to stick to that. Um, but I think going back to the point that we're talking about, will having this make a difference? I think it's only going to make a difference if it's enforced at the end of the day, and that I think is a different can of worms. I think we need to hold judges and players accountable both to these tempo rules first, before we can really start rejoicing. Before oh yeah, they added the deck search first a game, and now it's 60 seconds instead of the 15 seconds. Well, okay, now I'm going to stare at my watch, and the moment you take maybe not 60 seconds, 61 seconds, but like 60, 90 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes, I'm going to call a judge over and like bring that to their attention. Like, I don't know, do we have to be that petty? Is it being petty, or is it like truly enforcing the rules of the game? Is it no different than your opponent? You know, is it no different than your opponent looking at an extra card or um, something like that? Should we treat it with that level of severity? That's a good question. It's hard to answer. I think we need to get closer to that. I don't know if I would necessarily like, especially like so many things with judging. It's a nuanced
Sure.
thing, right? Like we can't just assume that every case is the same and that every scenario brings the same challenges. We have to look at as judges, we have to look at what's presented to us. You know, if it's a new player, if it's somebody with um, maybe a disability or with other factors in play. I think that is worth considering. And yeah, we can talk about it back and forth a little bit. We did before the podcast where everything's taken in context. You know, if I'm watching a game and I see a player take 30 seconds to make a game move and then make two game moves within 5 seconds and then make another 10 seconds to make another game move and then make two more game moves in another 5 seconds or so, I don't think I'm going to give a penalty for that. But if a player takes 15 seconds each turn or each game move, like searches an energy, shuffles the deck, attaches energy, takes 10 seconds, plays a different ball search, searches, shuffles the deck, you know, all that kind of stuff, then that to me is more egregious than the player that is taking that, even though they're breaking the rule more than the other player is by the letter of the law. It's clear that one player is slow playing, utilizing and compartmentalizing their turn more than the other player. So I think that's at the end of the day, that's where we go as far as slow playing. Um, and as a AHJ, I've seen it to where like watching for pace of play can paralyze some newer
Mm-hmm.
judges and paralyze like them from catching stuff that's bigger or more impactful. Like, you know, they're watching for pace of play and then somebody is playing items under budget
Yep.
or drawing extra cards from an Iono or something like that. And those things, you know, pace of play is important, but it's almost like the reality of it is, Aaron, is that it's a problem that usually fixes itself in a lot of
Sure.
ways. Like if you are chronically slow playing, unless you're manipulating the clock because you won a long game one and then just want to time your opponent out. If you're losing game one, you're putting yourself at a big disadvantage if you're slow playing, you know? So I don't want to say like we should ignore it or anything like that, but I will say that it isn't at the very front of my mind when I'm judging, if
Yeah,
that
no,
makes
that's
sense.
totally fair. And I think that any language they use to describe this, even though it's part of tempo of play, I don't think the issue at hand is actually the idea of slow playing. And I think that the problem is, from a viewer's perspective, if somebody is taking a 5-minute turn to search their deck, like that's just not fun to watch. At that point, like I've clicked off, I've gone
Sure.
and gone and looked at something else. And part of the issue ends up being where it is like a tempo of play, and I think that that's the easiest way to add enforceability to it from a judging perspective. How do you enforce this en masse at a 2,000 player tournament, though? That's the problem I have, because you end up
Yeah.
with a lot of hands in the air, a lot
It's
of like
tough.
he said, she said scenarios of my
Yeah.
opponent took took 2 minutes to search their deck when they played Arvin. It's like, no, I didn't. Okay, cool. Next table.
Hmm.
You've got the same story like three tables down. Like what? There's not. It's very difficult unless you are watching live in the moment to verify whether or not something like this has happened, and you can't enforce it. And I think if you have the language written in where there is a ceiling, that's good information. It is definitely good information. More information is almost always better, but it opens the door for people who do want to potentially abuse that, because they will figure out the optimal way within whatever the maximum allotted time is to gain as much information as possible, which is fully legal and is totally fine. But it's not, it theoretically should not be viewed as an abuse of the time rules. But I also think that that same player, if they initially would have taken a 5-minute turn, you're just going to shift the other 3 minutes and 30 seconds deeper into the turn. So I think it should long term be a good thing, because you're right. Games of Pokemon, like for as long as I've played, the last I feel post COVID is really when it seems to have cropped up the most. Of
Hmm.
everyone's going in the tank on turn one, trying to verify exactly what their six prize cards are, and even in like some cases, people are only looking for specific cards, but they're doing it so methodically you need to light a fire under their butt at some point and say, no, we need to get this done.
Yeah, no, I mean that's entirely valid. I don't think anybody that's played in the last 4 or 5 years would say otherwise at this point. Like there are times where, hey, let's play with some sense of urgency. And I mean, you go to League Cup, you experience it. You do it on a local level, you see it there too. It's not just
No.
regionals. It's like it's endemic. It's everywhere. Like there's times where I'm literally sitting across from the table from my opponent, and they're like, taking forever, and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and and in the back of your mind, you're like, we're not going to finish this game.
Correct.
Like, and I can remind my opponent, like, hey, this is a timed game. We're at risk of but neither one of us winning because we're taking so long. But like that creates a whole scenario where now they're like, oh, is he just pressuring me to make a game action too soon or something like that? Like it's a very hard thing to navigate as a player, and it's difficult as a judge too. So
I mean, it's got to be a systemic change at the end of the day. And I think that the nice thing, because you do
yeah,
have the publicly visible stream games, if it is something that is enforced in those stream games, it'll eventually trickle its way down to the rest of the event as well. And over time, we'll
yeah,
see a
I know.
shift back toward more expedited pace of play.
I know, like the NFL tries to steer the ship with like making points of emphasis as for their judges, for like the referees in the game, where they're like, hey, targeting or you know whatever pre-snap motion, like different things in the game that they see as, oh, there's a lot of this going on. We want to curtail this. We're going to make it a point of emphasis. We're going to start, you know, being a little more hair trigger happy with giving
Sure.
penalties for it. And I think you could potentially do the same thing with Pokemon, at least. Like, Pokemon can make an announcement like, hey, this season, like, we're really cracking down on slow playing, or we're going to be more diligent about it. And like maybe you have a judge on each team that just walks around and checks for slow play in like the play area or something like that. I mean, there's different thoughts. It again, it's not, there's not an easy answer, but I think it is worth looking into and worth figuring out an answer at some point, because yeah, it is getting to the point where it's just it's determining a lot of stream
Yep.
matches and a lot of matches on
Yep.
the floor.
And it's not even, again, like the larger player base is not trying to abuse anything. Everyone is trying to
No.
achieve a level of information that gives them the greatest chance of winning the game, because that's what everyone's goal is when they sit down to play a game of Pokemon, is they want to win. But what it has led to is this weird groupthink mentality that this methodical play is the only way and the optimal way to do it. And instead, they just need somebody to show them that you can do it while not taking 6 minutes. And there are players that are great examples of this, like
Yeah, like
Hyper
Piper
Lapine. I think
Lapine.
Ian Rob's a good example as well.
Yeah.
There's one other one that I had at the top of my head, but I can't think of who it was.
Um,
There was someone else from this season that
Trying
also played relatively fast. Oh, early in the season, Emma Hagen was playing
okay.
extremely quickly on stream with her Flareon deck, and still, a deck that's got tons of one ofs, still able to identify prizes in a quick manner, and is going through the rest of the game quickly because those prize cards have been identified. So it's the problem is a lot of other players do this lengthy prize check and then still take forever on their subsequent turns and subsequent game actions, even though they have the information that they need to move forward with things. So
Yeah. Yeah, I see
we'll
that a
we'll
lot
have to
too,
see.
where they're just
We'll have to see.
agonizing.
That being said, there is one other rules change that is actually not outlined in this image, and that is currently present in the handbook, even though the handbook at large has not been updated, and that is part of the concessions and intentional draws section. And so the only new information here, which was a surprise to a lot of people who flocked to the document looking for that first deck search ruling and discovered some stuff in this ID section that they thought was all new info, like the using information outside of current game or match. But, or no, sorry, that is the new one.
Yeah,
But
that's the
things
new
like
part.
referring to tournament standings, where no, you already shouldn't have been doing that. You shouldn't have access to that information. Like, you can make estimates and guesses at, like, if you're really good at doing the math and you memorize the pairings for every single round, you should theoretically know what the standings are. But if you're going to go through the legwork of doing that, good for you. Like, that's way too much for me to do on a dang League Cup. of all things. But no, using
Yeah.
information outside of the current game or match, including taking illegal game actions to access additional information to decide the result of the match, is no longer allowed. And so what that means, we've seen several instances of this, including in stream games, where players flip over the top card of their deck, saying, "Oh, well, if I top deck boss, then I win." And sometimes they do, and their opponent's like, "Okay, cool, you got it." Whereas otherwise, that game would have been a draw. And they're now saying, "This isn't allowed. You cannot do that anymore." So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think we've been enforcing it as judges out on the floor the last few
Okay,
regionals, but it's just
good.
codified now, more or less. So yeah, this is just an update to reflect the intent that we've established as judges. But yeah, just to go in a little more detail, like it's not just flipping over cards, it's looking at your prize cards. It's basically doing anything that you would not be able to do during that game. There are some things you can do as a player, like if time is called and both players, like you've done the +1, you can reveal your hand to your opponent. That's allowed. You can talk through the board state for a brief amount of time, but you cannot coerce your opponent into doing
Sure.
anything, or it's really not like one thing I mentioned to my judges when I was AHJing was it's not a contest to see who's the best at explaining their board state or the best at like convincing their opponent that they can win this game. It is a game of Pokemon, and the game should ultimately be decided by the cards you play on the table and how you play them. Anything else is supplemental to that and often detrimental to that. We don't want a player who's just like charismatic or really just like, come on, man, I need this for my world's invite. Like you're already out of it. You're I got pared down to you or something like that. You don't want that. Like everybody that plays in a tournament has a right to win the game or a right to play the game as they want to play it. Um, and so I think that's just good to have some more clarification. This is just so everybody is aware. There are two different reference documents in the Play Pokemon rules and resources, and probably more than that. It should be looking at before you go into a tournament. But the main two that you're going to want to look at, there's one overarching document that is the Play Pokemon Tournament Rules
Mm-hmm.
Handbook, um, or Pokemon, yeah, Tournament Rules Handbook, and then there's one specific to the TCG, which is the Pokemon TCG Tournament
Yeah.
Handbook. And then there's also the Tournament Rules Book for TCG, and then should also be reviewing the Standard of Conduct policy and any other policies in there. So including the inclusion policy and attire and cosplay policy and stuff like that. Just this is a great page. Like the rules and resources, I would recommend anybody that's going to regionals for the first time, or you know, pretty much every year, just kind of go through and refresh your memory on it, because there are a lot of stuff. Even as a judge, like I have to remind myself of certain things. Like the other day, I had to like kind of ask some other judges, like, when does a match officially start? Is it like when you sit down at your table across from your opponent, or what? And it's like, well, a match officially starts when the time starts. It's like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. But just kind of stuff like that where you have to like um, kind of talk through some stuff, you know, and it just helps to have people that know the documents. If you ever have a question or need help with stuff, always ask a judge in your area or somebody that has been playing a long time. They'll probably know the answer as well. So yeah, it's just this is where I go for the
Yeah.
most part. If I have a question as to like what a ruling would be or something like that. And then there's some other documents outside of Pokemon.com, like the compendium and just I guess card knowledge. But other than that, this is kind of like where I usually start, or where I tell
Yep.
people to go if they have a
And
question.
honest, all of these are fully available on mobile as well. So if you have a question and you are mid
Mm-hmm.
tournament, you can pull out your phone and answer it yourself, like relatively easily. I know I've gone to plenty of League Cups where players were arguing with the TO about how many rounds it should be and whether or not we should have top 4 or top 8. and somebody would pull it up on their phone and say, no, look, here's the breakdown. We have X number of players. That means we have this size of top cut. And they're like, okay, cool. And it all gets resolved and everyone goes on their way. Because, the day and age we live in, people don't just accept what you say at face value. You have to provide them the proof. But the nice thing in this instance is that the proof is readily available.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not in the era of speculation or, man, back when texting first came out and you could like text an answer to, like, they had text answer services where somebody would provide an answer to a trivia question through text message that you asked, but you had to pay a service fee or something like that. Like we're at that was an actual person that did that too. That's crazy. But yeah, we're pretty far away from that where you can just Google the answer
They
for the
just had
most part.
Ken. They
Just
just
don't
had
use
Ken
AI
Jennings
to
sitting in a room
summarize.
somewhere.
Basically, just don't use AI to summarize TCG rulings. I would not
Sure.
recommend that. Um, but yeah, that's just something we wanted to cover. And I do think it's a good thing that Pokemon is vocal, or at least trying to be like transparent with rule changes and publicizing them like when they come out. It's better than shadow dropping something and then leaving it up to the players to figure out. Um, that's never
Correct.
ideal. So this is an improvement, and I'm happy to see that. I'm just hopeful that we get an update to the TCG handbook sooner rather than later.
Yes. Yes, definitely. It would be nice to have it before EUIC. Like I was hopeful, even though I'm not playing in
Mm.
EUIC or Toronto, I was hopeful that it would be before Toronto, but obviously don't expect that to happen at this point. So
We'll see. Yeah, maybe
that
Friday.
that honestly, that's the nightmare scenario, right?
I mean, yeah, we can make an announcement about it, I guess, at some point. Wouldn't be the worst thing. Wouldn't be the first time we've had to make like last minute announcements about stuff. But it is what it is. Like we're you they want to take extra time to make sure everything's like stands up to scrutiny and is play tested and thought through very
Yep.
well. So I don't have any illusions that they know all that, like they've already written it and they're just sitting on it. I don't know. I'm sure there's a
No, I
reason.
think somebody
And
was supposed to write it and they took more vacation time over Christmas and therefore
yeah,
it's not done.
like the
Yeah.
TCG person took an extended
Yep.
vacation. And all the other players, all the other people were like, "Well, we're just going to release it
And
without you
nobody
then."
nobody
So
told the social media manager.
yeah, poor guy.
But I guess that's enough for this week about how we play the game. Maybe not the best transition, but we'll figure it out. But anyway, before we get into what people will be playing this weekend, we're going to take a pit stop over at Blaine's quiz show. And I know this week it is John's turn to ask me some questions. And I don't know, John told me before the show that he had changed some of the questions for this week. Initially, he texted me at some point last week and said, is Pokemon Go fair game as a category? And so we'll have to see whether or not that is still what he's going with as of now.
All right, Aaron. Well, I pivoted a little bit, so I won't be completely Pokemon
Okay.
Go. I know you're a little bummed out about that,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
totally.
All right. So just as a reminder, it's been a little bit since we played Blaine's quiz show. How you play is I will give Aaron three multiple choice questions. If he is stumped, he is allowed to ask for one hint at any time. And if a player, in this case Aaron, answers all three questions without the use of a hint, a bonus point will be awarded. I honestly
I
don't
do
remember
not
the
have the scores
scores at this
offhand either,
point.
but I'm going to
We will pop them
right
up
there.
right. Yep, there they are. Wow, wow. Aaron's still in the lead. I know that. And hopefully doesn't advance it too far out of reach for me. So we will see. Aaron, your topic this week is Team Rocket Strikes Back.
Okay.
So I did a Team Rocket theme. I think we've had that theme once before, so I wanted to use this moniker here. All right. Your first question.
Yep.
You ready? What Pokemon does Team Rocket's Jesse accidentally trade with Benny for the saluting Wobbuffet that is now part of big anime lore?
Okay.
Is it Lickitung, Scyther, Nidorina, or Magikarp?
Okay. So I think I would have preferred the Pokemon Go questions to what now looks like might be all anime questions. But This one I do know because this is relatively early on in the show when I still would have been watching it. So I'm going to
Yeah.
go with Lickitung.
Lickitung is correct. Yeah, it's actually I think Lickitung is captured in the Kanto, like the
Yes,
first like stretch, and then comes over to Johto and then is traded to Benny for Wobbuffet. And yeah, Wobbuffet now, like I think, is pretty much as synonymous with Team Rocket as Meowth and Coughing and Ekans and stuff.
which
So
is crazy because like they don't even,
uh
do they still have Coughing and Ekans?
no, they switch up their like Pokemon they use primarily whenever they go to a
Okay.
new region, I think
Yeah.
now. Like when they went to Unova, it was like Malamar
Oh,
or Inkay and who was the other guy? I don't
you're way
remember.
ahead of me. I got nothing.
Yeah, I should have asked you which starters they had. Which Pokemon haven't been one of Team Rocket's Pokemon, like
Yeah.
Jesse or James's Pokemon.
I've
Oh well. Next time I do a Team Rocket one, I'll lump it in there. All right, next question. Which of the following is not a leader of Team Go Rocket?
okay.
So that's the villains of Pokemon Go. Is it Sasha, Arlo, Sierra, or Cliff?
So I do know there are three, which just makes sense based on how you're asking this question.
Mm.
But there are three. There are two male and one female leader. So I'm going to go with Arlo and Cliff R, and then that leaves me with Sasha and Sierra.
Sasha could be a guy's
That's
name.
fair. You're right. You're totally right. You're just trying to throw me off, though. I know Arlo and Cliff.
Maybe.
Oh man. Um. Hmm. I don't have a way to really eliminate these. So, oh wait, do these chorus? Hold on, hold on. Is there like a naming scheme that goes with these? No, doesn't look like it. Um, we'll go with Sasha.
Okay,
Yeah,
final
yeah,
answer.
locking it in.
All right. Somehow you are correct. It is
So
Sasha.
are
I'm so mad about this. I'm
are
seething.
these? Do you know? Are these like coded where like if your team?
No, you encounter all
Okay,
three of them if
okay,
you're just as you go across and use your rocket radar or whatever they call it. I forget what the name of it is, but there's a device where you can encounter gym leaders by equipping it. Um, yeah, it's yeah, that's about it. All right. Well, let's see if we can at least prevent Aaron from going perfect without a hint this week. We'll go ahead and slide into the last question. I have a feeling Aaron's probably
oh,
gonna do well
oh,
on
here
this
we
one
go.
too, but we'll see.
I'm excited now. This one's going
All
to be
right,
card game
Aaron.
related, right?
It is going to be card game related. Which of the following Pokemon has appeared in a Wizards of the Coast era Rocket card, as well as the sets Team Rocket Returns and Destined Rivals, with the in parentheses Team Rocket or Rocket's owner's designation? Is it Wobbuffet, Coughing, Sneasel, or Hitmonchan?
Okay. So, sorry, for clarification, you're saying this Pokemon, when you're saying Wizards of the Coast era Rocket card, is that original Team Rocket set?
I'm saying no, it can be in any Wizards of the Coast
Okay.
era. So
Okay.
it had a Wizards of the Coast card that had
Gotcha.
Rocket's Pokemon X. It appeared in Team Rocket Returns, and this Pokemon appeared in Destined Rivals as
Okay.
well. So all three.
Okay. So there's no Team Rocket's coughing from Wizards of the Coast. I know there was a dark wheezing, but the regular Pokemon was still a regular one. There's a Team Rocket Sneasel EX from Team Rocket Returns, then obviously Team Rocket Sneasel and Destined Rivals. There's Wobbuffet in Team Rocket Returns and Destined Rivals. Hitmonchan, I know there's one in Gym Challenge, I think, along with Team Rocket's Hitmonchan EX and Team Rocket Returns. But it's not. Is there a Team Rocket's Hitmonchan and Destined Rivals? No, because there's like Murkrow. What are all the Team Rocket's Pokemon in Destined Rivals? We have Mimikyu, Murkrow,
We're gonna
Wobbuffet,
list them all.
Sneasel, the Spidops line, Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres, Nidoking, Crobat. So no, there's no Hitmonchan. So it's not Hitmonchan. It's not Coughing. I don't think there's a Wobbuffet. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and use the hint.
Okay. It is not a Gen 1 Pokemon.
Okay. Wish I hadn't used the hint. Oh man.
It's so mean. I could just make it not a helpful.
Let's see.
I don't know. I should have wrote it. I should write hints down beforehand, just so I don't.
Yeah,
Get
but I mean, you
accused
could
of, like,
that could have been your
leaving
hint
it.
anyway, and then like, what good does it do me?
Sure.
Let's see.
It's
Let's
a
see.
50-50, yeah. But not a helpful
We'll
50
go.
50 in this
I
case.
also know. I don't remember what it was called, because I think I used this when I was doing a trivia question previously, where there is a
Mhm.
Sneasel that is like owned by the Team Rocket guy from the fourth movie, but I don't remember if it has his name or if it says Team Rocket. But I think that
Uh,
makes more sense than the Wobbuff. Gosh, dang it! Is there a Team Rocket's Wobbuffet? Because that would have had to be. No, because Wobbuffet was not around when there were owners Pokemon, so it has to be. I'm gonna go with Sneasel.
and Aaron, you should have not used your hint because you would have
Oh
been
man.
3 for 3 this week. It is Sneasel. Yeah, it's from the. So the reason I didn't say like actual set name was because it's a Wizards of the Coast best set. I think is the designation. It's a really like obscure like farewell set that Wizards of the Coast did,
Oh.
where they had some of the licensing from like the newer stuff. So this is like an e-reader card that
Oh.
has like that e-reader border, but is a Wizards of the Coast card. It's a really interesting kind of crossroads pair, like weird, because some of the stuff in that set is e-reader looking without having e-readers. It's like the
Yeah.
e-reader
Yeah.
borders, and some of it isn't. Like it's the older like Cosmofoil hollow looking pattern. I don't know. It's a really interesting set. But yeah, this Sneasel did appear in that. I was hoping that would trip you up. And the Hitmonchan, yeah, you sussed out that is not in Destined Rivals. It is in the other
Mm-hmm.
two. And then yeah, Coughing. I didn't count Dark Pokemon, but yeah, you did pretty good, Aaron. I have to say, making it very hard for me to climb up. I was in the lead at one point, but I knew it would be very short lived. So I did appreciate it while I had it, and yeah, I'll wave at you from as I trail and kind of huff and puff up the hill trying to catch up to you. But we'll see how it goes next week.
We will see how it goes next week, John. I think it's going to be a good time for you. I think you'll have fun.
All right. I can hope to have fun. That's
Sure.
that's my goal now. Catching you's out of reach, but
No.
having fun.
I don't think that's true. I don't think I'm ahead by that much. I'm pretty sure now I might be ahead by like 4 or 5.
No, you're more than that. I
Okay.
think it's not quite double digits, but it's pretty close if I remember.
We'll figure it out. Or I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
The numbers
the viewers
above
know
the
before
viewers
we do.
the viewers know right now because the numbers are above our heads.
Yep.
But, well, they were above our heads. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's enough of Blaine's quiz show for this week. We'll say farewell to it as we head into just a discussion on the decks and the metagame surrounding the Toronto Regional this upcoming weekend. And I know historically we've done things like tier lists or like a hot or not. And I've just felt so kind of blah about this format to the point where I'm honestly kind of glad that I'm not going to this event, in the sense that I don't have a deck that I'm particularly confident in playing that I feel gives me a better chance than anyone else to win in the room. And part of that is because I feel like the best overall, the most consistent best deck is probably Goldango.
Mm,
And that hurts me to say, just like to my core, that hurts me to say. But I also feel like it's very difficult to make that deck win more from a player skill perspective. Like, obviously, there's a sequencing thing. The whole deck is just like a sequencing pile. But because there's no kind of comeback mechanics built into it, I can't win more with Goldango than basically anyone else in the room can. And
yeah,
so,
there really isn't like a high amount of agency with that deck.
right.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. And that was what I discovered because I played it to Atlanta last year when we thought it was fairly well positioned going into the new format. And that's when I learned I literally never want to play Goldango to a tournament ever again because it's something where, yes, drawing cards is super fun and the attack is ridiculously powerful. And there's a reason why a lot of slower cards, like, or big beefy strategies, are just out of the format because Goldango exists. And it got these new tools with the Soul Rock and Lunatone where it can play this one prize board now. And we've seen some like jockeying for position where players are trying to include things like Vitality Band, Premium Power Pro, Hops Kramerant. We saw from the Korean League this past weekend, some of the Goldango players were playing the baby Goldango again. We've seen people include Low Punny to combat Cornerstone Ogrepon. And as a result of that, you're playing an Ultra Ball, which makes that Goldango more accessible without having to put Genesect in play. So the pieces all kind of just fit together. And the deck almost feels solved to me. And it's only a matter of there's like 2 or 3 flex slots, and it's a matter of what do you want to tech for? As far as do you want to tech for Mirror? Do you want to tech for Cornerstone? And do you want to tech for Noctowl decks? Because we've also seen Watchtower pop up, and that'll be kind of a common thread for a lot of decks as we move through this because things like Dawn Zard or Pidgeot Zard are also, spoiler alert, in a really good place right now. But I feel like it's hard to argue for the vast majority of people against playing something like Goldango going into this weekend, and I will absolutely not be surprised when it is the most popular deck on day one.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. I think everybody that's been playing other one hit KO decks like Raging Bolts and Sacrilege has moved over to Golden Go in the interim time where we hadn't had a tournament in a while. Um, and yeah, the list, like you said, is pretty much solved. There are some variations that you can make. Like I'm running a list that runs TM Evo instead of the Ultra Ball,
Okay.
just because I think it allows you to get it out, get the low punny or the low punny out under item lock more effectively because you run 4 Arvin. I think it works out a little bit easier to TM Evo into stuff, and it has some extra benefits with that. Where if your opponent's like, I don't know, it makes sense. But if we have the string cheese man at the very top, we have a couple other decks that are pretty close behind. I'd say number 2, number 3, at least the last few times we've been looking at Dragapult Dustnor, and online it hasn't been Guardy, but like let's be honest, like Guardy is still number like 2 or 3, if not 1
Yeah.
secretly.
You can make the argument for one as far as like
Yeah,
results are concerned, but when you do take like the popularity factor into it, like I don't know if people are just bored with Gardevoir because it's been around for 3 years now, or maybe they're just not confident in playing it, so they don't want to play it online, or maybe they just don't want to play it in best of one. Maybe they really want to play it in best of three, and that's where you will see more play and more success when we get into a major tournament level atmosphere. I don't really have much to
yeah.
say about Gardevoir right now either. I do think
No,
like been a slow transition kind of away from Jellicent, but
yeah, we've seen that like with the rise of Golden Go
yeah.
and players teching for Gardevoir with
Hmm.
Golden Go. We've seen a transition back to like a one shot mentality, which is interesting. I don't know if it like because a lot of the Golden Go lists have started cutting all the Levincias and started cutting,
The
the
Lana is
Lana
gone.
Zaid.
Yep.
So now it's like, well, Jellicent seems pretty good again if all the Golden Go players aren't going to respect it. So, this is kind of the end game of metas in a lot of ways. Like if you've been playing long enough, you've seen this like with Lugia and countering Lugia, and then Path to the Peak and countering Path to the Peak. So like anytime we get into a really stale end game, it's really just trying to the game of it is trying to figure out how greedy can I be.
Yep.
Like, how much do I have to respect the deck? How much do I have to prepare for it? And do my techs really make the difference on my tournament run on that day? It's hard to say. Like, we don't really know exactly how it's going to shake out. I think if I'm playing Guardy, I think Jellison seems a little bit more appealing than it did at the start of this format, because Golden goes moving away from all those things. Um, and it just helps like item lock. It makes the deck a lot different. Um, like, you still get to use Monkey Dory, which is it's the deck that does that the best,
Mm-hmm.
which is a huge strength of the deck. But yeah, I don't know if yeah, it's like we can make assumptions, we can ask questions. It's tough to predict. Like, I haven't played a lot with Gardevoir. I don't know what it looks like in this metagame, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But I know that it's still good. I know that there's going to be a lot of good players playing it. Riley McKay, this is his first regionals back after a Worlds War, and I just watched Chip's interview. I finished watching it with Riley and Isaiah, and Riley was like, "Well, my first regionals will be Toronto, so we'll see Riley bringing
Oh,
a
I'm
deck
sure.
to Toronto, and it's definitely going to be Gardevoir. Like, there's no question about it. So I think we'll see a lot of good players pivot back to it. A lot of players, kind of like how we had back at the end of the format before rotation, and multiple times this season, have just kind of stuck with a comfort pick at this point, and we're moved away from like trying to make like an Absol Kangaskhan deck work, and like spicy rogue decks and stuff like that. I mean, there will be some interesting things that we can talk about in a minute, but I think the vast majority of players at this point will value a deck that they are able to confidently pilot and play into a room over a surprise pick.
Oh, for
Um,
sure. And I think
yeah.
Gardevoir is in a like it's kind of a weird place. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see the successful list be something more similar to what actually ended up winning EUIC. So kind of that more hybrid style. I think the
Mm,
weird thing, everyone was so worried about Diancie coming into this format. And now it's gotten to the point where people aren't even playing the card because it's actually not that good in the current state of the metagame, because it's just not good against Goldango. And it's like a death sentence if you ever start the card.
yeah.
So you might as well just not include it, because the matchups where it's good, like the Zoroark or really it's the dark decks that it's good against. And most of the dark decks just aren't good right now. Or their Charizard, and Diancie doesn't really help there
Yeah.
as
It
much.
it doesn't swing it as much as it did, but like,
Right.
like a Zoroark deck or something like that.
So instead, we're seeing like Gardevoir decks where they're including Watchtower, like the latest Henry Chow list, as an example, from what I understand, has gone back to TM Evo, has luxury or luxurious cape in it, which is something I know. Friend of the show, Hunter Butler, actually played that too, LAIC. And the idea there is you have a Frillish with the Lux Cape as an option to where Goldango just can't kill it, even when
mm,
they're playing like their Frillish techs. Once you get it to a certain point, you're able to, they can do 150 and then you can move a bunch of damage over, and then they can't repeat that 150, or they can do 100 and then you can move it all off, and they can't they can just never knock out the Frillish, and you're just building up damage on their board while item locking them, and you just eventually win the game that way. But so like, and it's more methodical, slower, trying to make sure it gets set up. Whereas we'd seen a shift prior to Phantasmal Flames towards slimmer Gardevoir lines. Like Henry at one point was playing a 2-1-2 Guardy with like 3 rare candies and taking arguably a bad Dragapult matchup. Whereas now we've shifted back, said, no, we're going to set up Curlias, we're going to set up Gardevoirs, we're not losing to Dragapult, and we're going to have as robust of a board as possible. So it also kind of insulates you from the Soul Rock attack as well, and making your
hmm
Ralts a little bit less vulnerable in that regard too.
Yeah. I think if you're able to execute a game plan against Golden Go like that, where it's pretty easy to execute
Mm-hmm.
and get into play, and you can confidently do it most games, that allows you to then pivot and look at, okay, what other decks are going to be at the top of the room, and that brings up Dragapult, and so now you're able to refocus and say, all right, we're going to go back to TM Evo. We can play a little bit slower, develop our board, use TM Devo, kind of stuff like that, more effectively. Use Monkey Dories more effectively. Um, I don't know. Does the Henry Chalice run TME Turbo Energize or no?
Not as far as I'm aware. Like the big
That's
things
probably
are the
that was
Evo
like
and
a
the Lux Cape.
okay. Um, so yeah, I think you know if you're confident into Golden Go, then yeah, the next like we talked about Golden Go and Gardevoir. I think the next thing to talk about would be Dragapult, and um, it's in an interesting spot right now. I think people are kind of not respecting the deck, and whether that's rightfully so or not,
Well, I
I
mean,
don't know. I
John, you
feel
you stopped playing it.
I
That's
know
how good can it be?
it's in a weird spot right now. I'm not going to pretend like I mean, it's still good. It still wins tournaments. It still does really well. It just doesn't feel as like dominant to me as it did earlier. I know that's kind of weird to say because the results might tell you that it's not really lost a step, and it's gained some things with Dawn and with um, Hilda, allowing you to more consistently find your partners. But dude, you still have to like draw into stuff, and like it just feels so bad. So many games just like there's so many games where you just don't get a good like you don't get Puff in turn one, or you don't get the Drag Cloak turn two, or you don't get an energy attachment for 4 turns, and
And you just
you're
lose.
behind. Or the worst part is you don't just lose. You can't just scoop the game up because you have Badu, you have
Yeah,
Countercatcher, you have ways to get back into the game, and like you have Dustnor, and you can just go okay, board wipe. When your opponent's down to one prize and they can't close the game out because you've essentially destroyed their whole board state, and you can run the table from there. So like you can't just scoop early. Like that's the problem. You have to play it out basically, and it's a strong deck. It's a good deck, but it'll give you an ulcer. Like it'll make your teeth hurt. It'll drive you up a wall trying to play the deck, man. Like that's I think why I pivoted away from it was I was just getting. I'm not saying that I wasn't able to win games or do well, but it was just like any tournament I played it at was just a miserable experience. And you talked about Golden Go being a miserable experience from you. The flip side of that is like whether you've won or lost the
that's
game by turn three,
that's
so
fair.
you can scoop it up or like keep push the pedal down and have a conclusion. So you don't have to just sit there and be like, well, but if I get this and then my opponent doesn't do this and they get Ionoed and they don't draw out of it and then this and that and the other, and it's like, yeah, I mean, or you just run away with it and don't have to worry about it. Like, I don't know. Um, all that to say, I think Golden Ghost still a good play for the weekend, even if I'm not, excited by it as much as I used to be, if I'm honest. I think players aren't really running Psyduck anymore, for the most part, unless you're a Zoroark or a Charizard deck. But even those Charizard decks don't seem to be running it. I haven't seen Psyduck a whole lot. I don't know about you.
No, it
Um,
depends. Like because a lot of the Charizard decks don't play Dust Noir, so they're opting to just like fight fire with fire, so to speak, rather than
yeah,
including the duck to try to mitigate it. But
right,
Dragapult, I don't know. Like it can win. Obviously, like you said, it can win games. But I feel like the games where it does win are when everything goes right, or Badu puts in enough work that everything goes wrong for your opponent.
right. But do cheese, yeah,
And neither of those feel like good things to rely on over the course of a tournament this long.
I agree.
To the point where I almost feel like Dragapult is a better best of one deck currently than it is best of three at the end of the day. Like I feel like it would be better as a league challenge deck or even a league cup deck than as a regional or higher deck. And it's just like Dracloak's obviously really good. Dusknoir, broken card. Dragapult has really strong attacks. Well, one really strong attack. Jet Headbutt's not very good, but
Yeah,
and Badu is obviously really good. So like it's a pile of really good cards, but I think it's kind of I don't know. It feels like it needs somebody to innovate on it for it to really keep up with how everything else has kind of evolved. Because all the Dragapult lists still look the same as they did 6 months ago. Like
yeah. I did see a
nothing has
list.
changed in that deck.
I did see a list recently on I forget the tournament name, but it ran Moltres and Defiant Band over Blood Moon Ursa Luna.
Okay,
Um, so a little bit of a variation there, and then cut the tool jammers for 2 watchtower as a way to counter the Zards. So I think
That's
that's a trend.
crazy to me.
Well, we
It's
I know
crazy to me that Dragapult is teching for Charizard.
yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that 100%, but I can see the logic with it. Like you definitely, if you can shut that deck down, um, I guess that maybe that's just an online metagame tech because that deck online has been really popular. Like in the Limitless series,
Sure.
we've seen a lot of Charizard. So maybe it's just for that, and maybe it would be a bad thing to do for
Well,
regionals.
I don't know. I mean, it
But
did. It also won the most recent in-person regional. I think
mm,
that
that's true.
it would not surprise me for Charizard to actually be in the discussion for top 3 overall. Now it's going to be a little weird with dependence on like how they combine variants, where we've got like the Noctowl, like the Dawn Zard versus straight Pidgeot Zard, and whether or not those are separated from each other. Because if they're combined together, I think it'll be really up there on the metagraphic. I think a lot of people really like
Mm,
Charizard. They think it's good into Gardevoir. I think there are ways that the deck can be built to where it can be good into Goldango. It's like historically been viewed as having a solid Goldango matchup through the ability to play a one prize board with the Chi-Yu or play through Chi-Yu. And so like you take a KO, they KO something, you KO with Chi-Yu. If they KO Chi-Yu, cool. Now you KO with Charizard and Iono them to a low hand size. And you're doing all this off the back of the birds in your deck, whether it be the Noctowl or the Pidgeot. And also because Charizard is able to utilize Briar better than a lot of these other decks.
hmm
So it can take that single prize early in the Goldango matchup and still come out ahead at the end of the day because you take one, you Chi-Yu for 2, and then you Charizard Briar for 3, and the game's over.
hmm
Whereas a lot of other decks kind of can't afford to do that because they can't make up that odd prize card throughout the rest of the game. And that's kind of where Charizard has felt like it's been able to be successful. And so you end up in this weird, I would say it's a square, but it's not because Gardevoir's kind of doing its own thing over here. Whereas I feel like it's a triangle of Goldango is good into Dragapult, which is good into Charizard, which is good into Goldango, and then Gardevoir's just kind of like throwing rocks at everybody from the sideline.
yeah,
But those
and
are
kind of
undoubtedly
kicking
like the top 4
kicking
decks.
rocks.
I think I would think at the end of the day. But
Mm,
I don't know. In my opinion, I think Dragapult is kind of a tier below the other 3. I really do think Charizard is up there right now, although I don't think Noctowl is the best way to play it this weekend.
interesting. So you'd be more apt to do a Pidgeot
Yes,
centered. I mean, but a lot of the Noctowl lists still run Pidgeot.
they
Like,
do, but you eat up all
yeah,
this
it's a
space with
thin.
all the other like one, yes, one, it's like a 101 Pidgeot. 2, you're
Yeah,
eating up like 12 deck slots to play Dawn, 4 copies of Dawn and 4/4 Noctowl, and things like Fan Rotom. And then you're playing Area
right.
Zeros, and you're not now there has been a variant, and I think it has been more popular on like TCG Live Ladder or in Limitless online tournaments. I don't think I've seen any results for this in person, but a variant of that Noctowl Charizard that plays Water Ogerpon.
hmm
And I think I don't know if they play 1 or 2, but just the ability to utilize Torrential Pump and take early prizes with that, and then you also get kind of like the side angle of Sob being an option at some point during the game, but it being your extra Terra Pokemon as opposed to or in addition to the Terrapagos that the deck was also playing.
Right.
And that's kind of an interesting avenue to explore. I
Yeah,
I
I heard
still
about that.
I still think I would want to lean more heavily into just like what I would consider to be more consistent. It's less aggressive compared to the Noctowl build, but I think just a more standard stage 2 Charizard setup, do your thing and do the thing every single time. Whereas the Noctowl deck, it kind of goes back to like Terra Box, and we can talk about these afterwards as well if we just want to group them with the Noctowl. But that like the Terra Box effect or the Noctowl effect, where your deck is super powerful when it works, but when you like don't start Fan Rotom or you don't open with Poffin or you don't open just with some way to get basics on your board, it's like you decided you wanted to go out to drive your car, but instead you found a unicycle in the parking lot and you're just
Yeah,
trying to make it
it's
to
very
work.
sad. Yeah, and you don't run draw supporters, so you're just
No.
sitting there looking at your bad hand and just kind of like, well, okay,
Yes. And
do
then really
something.
like
Pokemon stick,
being so
do something.
dependent on Noctowl in particular when
Yeah.
and this again is as primarily or partially influenced by like the online factor where Watchtower has been way up in play rate even though it's normally only a one of in most of the decks that it's played in. Like some decks, like there are Zoroark lists that I've seen that play like 3 of them, which that's a whole different story. But
Yeah.
but people that are playing 1, sometimes 2 copies of the card, and they get it into play, and the Noctowl deck freezes up. It cannot do anything. Whereas a lot of times the more traditional Charizard variants play through like Arvin into TM Evo into like Pidgeotto and Charmeleon, and then you just need an Ultra Ball and you have a Charizard in play, and you're not trying to do all these fancy tricks. You just get the Charizard up and you go, and that
Right.
it's efficient enough. You don't need the extra things. Are they helpful? Absolutely, but I think that the world at whole, like the player base as a whole, is prepared for it now. So I don't see it being as successful as it was over in Stuttgart.
No, I think that's fair to say. Like, yeah, I think people won't be surprised by it. That's for sure. At this point, people have played against it, started teching for it heavily, that kind of stuff. Um, so we've covered all the major decks pretty effectively. We can move our way to some of the more rogue decks. The one I played the most, probably since we last time talked about the format, was the Mega Kangaskhan Buffalant deck.
Okay.
Um, I like the deck a lot. I don't think if Golden Go is going to be the most popular deck in the room, it gets a lot harder to like play that deck.
Have you been playing it with Crystal or no?
So I hadn't been, to be honest, and I haven't trust. I've just played a straight build of it for a long time, just because I liked how it forced your opponent to like play through the Kangaskhan. But yeah, you lose to Golden Go with that. So I hadn't been messing with Crystal too much. And that just kind of goes into like a different triangle, if you will, as to
Sure.
if you're playing Golden Go, are you respecting Crystal? Are you respecting Cornerstone? Like that kind of stuff. I ran it with Cornerstone for a while. That's right, when I had it online.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if the Golden Go player doesn't respect Cornerstone, you run through them. But yeah, the moment they put in Mega Lopunny or Mega Mawile, it gets a lot harder.
Yep.
I don't know. I think it's not the worst play for the weekend. Like you could, if you've been playing it for a lot online, and it's, I've seen a lot of newer players pick it up and play it. So it might be one of the decks that like a less experienced player picks up and plays.
Yep.
It's got a lot of things going for it. I mean, it reminds me of like the Stonejourner deck when Mew was really popular. It just kind of says, all right, I'm going to do my thing. And if you can answer it, cool. If not, like I'm going to win. And healing's cool. And you run ways to like counter all the gimmicks of you run mist energy and the medical energy, I think, to like prevent status conditions. I don't remember the name of that exactly.
Well, there's Mist. The other one that I think you're thinking of is therapeutic energy,
That's it. Yeah.
and
Thank
that
you.
like removes special conditions when you attach it. Yeah.
Yep. So prevents special conditions, removes them. That way, Monkey Dory can't just stall you out. Um, and yeah, I think it's not a bad deck. Like I don't think it's like we won't see a lot of top players playing it. I'll say that, to be honest with you, but
Sure.
I could see like one or two making deep runs into day two. If you hit the right matchups, if like Dragapult, pretty good if you run the Psyducks, especially like if you're able to get the miss energy down on that. It gets really hard for them to deal with it. So it just kind of, I don't know. I think if you run hot with it and you hit the right matchups, you can make a deep run with it. But I don't think it'll be like what top players play. And we've seen over the last few tournaments, or like this whole season, it's mostly the top players at the top. So
Sure.
I'd be surprised to see more than one or two in like top 32 of maybe another variant of it, like we've seen with maybe a resurgence of the Mega Absol variant. But I don't know how you beat just the same issue. How do you beat Golden Go? And it's I
Well,
have to dedicate a large portion of my deck to kind of counter it, and I mean that can be effective. Did you
you
want to say
do.
something?
You do. Yes. I was so it depends. So like you said, you have to cycle back and get in the mind of the Goldango players and say, one, am I willing to play into this what is generally considered to be an unfavorable matchup against what is probably going to be somewhere between 17 and 20% of the room? And I mean, if you can make it winnable, go for it. And the way that we've seen some people do it, we've seen they either cut the Absol or the Cornerstone or both. It depends. So you've got like this Kangaskhan's kind of got the shell now, where you have the Kangaskhan, and then you either play the Bouffalon or the Absol, and then or you play the Bouffalon. I think I've seen Bouffalon with Absol with no Cornerstone, or you get like this
Hmm.
triangle of Bouffalon, Cornerstone, and Absol. But now there's also been this introduction of a 2-1 Toad Scroll line as the proposed answer to Goldango because there was a research or a surge of low punny play in Goldango. So they were killing the Cornerstones anyway, and they didn't care.
Hmm.
And so now with the Toad Scroll as an option, Goldango suddenly becomes a significantly better matchup because when you have a charmed up Kangaskhan with Lively Stadium in play and Bouffalont on board, they have to discard what, 9 energy to one hit KO you?
Yeah,
And then you go Toad
something like that.
Scroll. Good luck.
Well, yeah, it's just I don't know how easy it is to get the Toad Scroll reset up if it gets knocked out.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It depends on how many
Yeah,
recovery cards you play. Like you do, like you've got Poke Gear. Well, it depend. I don't know. I'm not an expert in the deck by any means. I
yeah. I
did,
mean,
but
you run
I think Toad Scroll. This is like the segue I was trying to get to was this.
sure.
This popped up. I know that the specific list I think got top 4 in that Korean League tournament was a Kangaskhan list, but I believe it was like Absol Kangaskhan. But instead of the Cornerstone, they played a 2-1 Toad Scroll line. Um, and just the idea that I wanted to get to was if Goldango is going to be super popular, are we going to see a surge in Toad Scroll play as a result? And going off of that, do you think Gardevoir is actually down enough in play that we might see somebody pop up with something like Ray Chen's Toad Scroll deck from last year?
Excuse me. That's a good question. I mean,
Like if you want to
if
talk about rogue decks.
yeah, that would be an interesting one. And it gets some extra things with like you could run the Meganium in there that kind of buffs everything. Well, I guess that wouldn't work necessarily well with Toad Scroll EX because I think it just hits for
Yeah,
how many Pokemon that have grass
right.
energy on there.
Yeah. And you
Um,
need the area 0 in play
yeah,
to go
yeah,
wide. I think
that's
like
fair.
that list, I don't know if
Maybe,
that list would really change very much, but it can utilize Toad Scroll better than most other decks.
yeah. Uh, it's hard to say. Like the only person I've ever seen have any amount of success with that deck is Ray
Is Ray
Chen.
Chen, right?
Yeah. So if Ray Chen shows up to the tournament, sure, I'll buy that. Launch. I'll buy that deck does well just because of how good Ray Chen is. But yeah, I don't see a spicy rogue Venusaur deck kind of taking over the tournament or something like
No.
that. Um, I think if Gardevoir does have a decrease, I could see an Alakazam deck maybe doing well or something like that.
Okay.
Um, but I don't expect that deck to do well either, and mainly because Dragapult still exists, and that can be a really tough matchup for that. I mean, even if you run the battle cage or
Yeah.
whatever, all Dragapult needs is like 2 stadiums over the course of the match, and like a Dusknoir, and they can just kind of get rid of anything with energy and like Iono and do all that, and then it just gets really dicey from there.
Yep.
Um, so I don't know. It's unfortunately we're at a point where I mean maybe control it can do well. Like if somebody can brew up a control deck because the meta is so top heavy. So maybe it isn't. It isn't. It isn't. It's weird, right? Like we see like the same 3 or 4 decks being brought up as like you have to be able to beat these in order to win the tournament. But that's to say like there's still a lot of decks you could play to a regionals at this point. And it control really relies on it being very narrow at the top,
Right.
and I still think it's fairly narrow, but like it's not like a 30% deck or something like that, or a 20 20 25. Like we have maybe 120% deck, and then it's like 15 15 15 or 12,
Yep.
and then 5 5 5 5, something like that. Maybe would be like the meta percentage looking at it like that. Um, so it's tough. I don't think, and I don't really know what control even has right now anymore. I haven't really kept up with it. If it has anything good.
Me
So
either.
I
But
don't
I
know.
I do know I saw All Out Blitzel tweet about how Pidgeot's rotating soon, so he felt like he was going to need to play some more Pidgeot. So
Yeah.
there's a chance we'll see him show up with it. But
Hey.
as far as other decks go, I know I had mentioned at the top of the show I've been playing Terrorbox a little bit, and that's mostly just to
Mm-hmm.
help some people out who said that they wanted some more data on the deck. I have the same problem with it that I do with other Noctowl based decks, where the games where it works, it feels really great and it's wonderful. And then the games where your opponent goes secret box for Watchtower on turn one, and
Yeah,
you just cry because
it just crumbles.
you literally play one draw supporter and you didn't start with it, and there's nothing you
Yeah,
can do about that. And over the course of a tournament, like I mean, they're not going to have secret box on turn one every single game, but it's more likely, assuming that Watchtower is a popular tech in person as it is online, that something like that will happen, or you'll hit the scenario where you just brick, which the deck does not infrequently. And so like that, I mean, that to me discounts Terrabox and Flareon as potential plays.
hmm
And I don't really know if there's a way to fix that. I think that that's just kind of is what it is with that archetype. It's kind of an all or nothing sort of deal that you're signing on for when you sit down to play it.
yeah. And right now you get collateraled by people taking in Watchtower for Charizard,
Yep.
and like that just feels bad. Like even if your opponent wasn't expecting to play, like, even if your opponent has no idea how to play against Terrabox or how to play against Flareon,
Right.
if they get that turn one Watchtower and you have no answer, it doesn't matter. Like
Yep.
they don't need to know how to beat your deck. They just need to know how to like attach and attack. And that feels pretty bad, man. So I don't know. I definitely would steer clear of those Noctowl decks. At least I think that's a fair assessment. I think if you're going to Toronto this weekend, I would probably not play a Noctowl deck. Um, I think they have a big enough target on their back, and if you get, even if you get like two rounds where you hit into a Watchtower and like your opponent is able to get it out fairly regularly, that feels really rough.
Yep.
Like, and it's one of those things where like at the beginning of this format, nobody was teching for with Watchtower, and now we're at a
Mm-hmm.
point where it's a solid inclusion, and a lot of people are putting it in there, and rightfully so. I think it is a good stadium in this meta game. So
Yeah, I mean, it takes out a lot of things. Like you stop Pidgeot,
mm-hmm.
you stop Noctowl, you disable your opponent's Blood Moon, you turn off Kangaskhan.
Yeah, the Bouffalants
Yeah,
no longer have any value. Yeah, Pidgeot is no longer any valuable. Like, yeah, just a lot of little things.
and that's kind of built up in enough abundance over time. Like those decks have become powerful enough that it makes it worthwhile to play. Now, and
Mm-hmm.
then one deck that has kind of coalesced. It almost so you mentioned control, and I know when we say control, a lot of times people envision Pidgeot control as like the de facto control deck of the format. But the deck that has almost established itself as a pseudo control deck in how it has come to be played, which is very different from how people initially wanted to play it, is Enzorark. And
Mm-hmm.
like I mentioned a little while ago, I've seen lists with up to 3 Watchtower in them, and also lists that are playing Toad Scroll in addition to those Watchtowers. So it's got like it's trying to cover all the bases. Like Zorark is struggling to find a way to stay relevant in the metagame. You know, its kind of foothold in initially before Phantasmal Flames came out was that it had a very good Gardevoir matchup, and that went out the window as soon as Phantasmal Flames came out because everybody put Diancie in their Gardevoir deck. But
Yeah.
now that Diancie play is going down, or at least appears to be going down, Zorak's foothold is reestablishing itself there. They've added the Toad Scroll line to compensate to try to beat Goldengo, and then they're covering the Kangaskhan matchup by beating Cornerstone by playing Lopunny. And so is Zorark in a good enough position to actually take the event down? Or is it going to get this far and then just lose to a Charizard at the end of the day?
Yeah. That's a good question. I have a local of mine who has been playing a lot of Zoroark, and when it has the answers to the deck that it's going into and is able to execute its game plan, which it can do fairly well a lot of times. I think it is a good deck. Like, and especially if you're able to figure out exactly what metagame you're going to see for the day. Like, if somebody gave you a list of what decks you're going to see and said, all right, you're going to play this, you could then build a Zoroark deck that would be able to win a tournament
Mm-hmm.
fairly confidently. Um, but you can't tech for everything. Like that's where I'm going with this.
Sure.
you can try your best, but you're gonna have to take a bad matchup, whether that's Gardevoir or Golden Go or Charizard, which I don't think is the worst matchup, but it's not great. Like it can get sticky if the Charizard like doesn't take a knockout for forever and then runs Dusknoir and kind of runs you over or something like that. But um, I don't know. I don't think it's a bad deck. I think it still has a lot of intrigue, has a lot of power. Um, it's still going to struggle to close games out and like have. I think, yeah, it's still going to struggle to do what it needs to do to win games a lot of times. It gets really close, and then it's a punishing deck where if you make one mistake, like early game, it
Yeah.
like burning a resource, like getting rid of an ends PP up or a dark energy too early or something like that, it just then you don't have enough resources to close the game out. You see your whole deck pretty much every game because of trade, as long as you set up. So it's really just managing resources and executing a game plan. And it can do that fairly consistently. Like that's the nice thing is like if you are teching for stuff, you're able to set up your text a lot of time. You're able to get your game plan going. So I would say it's probably like Dragapult level of good right
Okay.
now,
Yeah.
where it you can win the tournament, and if you make the right meta calls and hit the right matchups, it's really not too bad, truthfully. But it can be also another deck where if you hit the wrong matchups, it feels really bad,
Oh, I'm
and
sure. Yeah.
you're just gonna like sit there and be like, why the heck did I play this deck?
Sure.
Like it's tough.
Okay. Well, I think that we've done kind of a general overview of pretty much all the decks we can expect to see. We didn't talk about things like, as much as I hate to say it, Marnie's Grimmsnarl is not a good play this
Yeah.
weekend. Um, Maybe it comes back after rotation, but just right now it's not very good. So keep it on the shelf. Hold strong. You'll get the Marnie's Grimmsnarl art rare with Ascended Heroes.
Oh yeah.
It still won't be good then, but
Nah.
the time will come. Just stay strong. But
Dude, also we didn't really talk about it, but Ascendant Heroes, man, what a bummer set. We were talking before the podcast and looking at like regulation marks of like
yes,
Japanese cards. And I think if we go 1-to-1 with what's in Japan, which I think is usually how Pokemon prints stuff, they don't really modify regulation marks.
no,
All the stuff in Ascended Heroes is I, right? Like all the like the Mega Halucha and all that other stuff that we got. The Pokepad, the item we were hoping to get is regulation J. So by that logic, it doesn't look like it'll make it into Ascended Heroes. And if that's the case, the good thing it's a mini set. Like, good thing it's a collector set that we don't have to
yeah.
like. It
The
won't be too hard to get.
From what, since we've now talking about other sets, there are the potential leaks for the set after the Mega Zygarde set, which looks like it's going to be a Mega Greninja set. If you combine the Zygarde and Greninja sets together, they're smaller than Ascended Heroes.
That's crazy.
Like Ascended Heroes is a mini set. Calling it a mini set
Yeah.
is definitely a misnomer. Like we'll call they. I think that Pokemon uses the term special set, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
400 cards at the end of the day because it's got like 80 or 100 SIRs.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
absurd, and
It's like Black Bolt White Fair,
they're
where they just.
beautiful. They look really really good, but you're
Yeah.
never going to see product on a store shelf. Although maybe that's not true because all like the scalper guys are moving on to One Piece now, so maybe there's a shot.
Yeah, and they've printed prismatic evolutions to death. Like they're still coming out with prismatic evolutions
Yeah,
today. And like I sort bulk at a card store and I see more prismatic evolutions than anything else, to be honest with you. And
because
like
they're all hunting that Umbreon, man.
I mean it's crazy, dude. And it I mean if that's the case, like if they go like that, like Black Bolt White Flare, I'd rather see that because that's a cooler set to me. But like yeah, prismatics just sells better and I
Sure.
guess just they made more of it.
Yeah.
Um yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I'm not here to speculate on the car market or anything like
No.
that. There is a lot of cool IRs. I'll give you that.
Like all
A
the
lot of.
comic book ones.
Oh yeah, I already started doing it with the Japanese ones, and I'm definitely gonna try to like have their reverse in English, so you have like the English name
Oh,
on the
cool.
Japanese, and then the
Yeah,
Japanese name on the English. I love that. That's a cool thing.
very much so.
But before we head out for the night, Aaron, I got a couple predictions I want to
Sure.
throw at you. So I got four predictions. First one is copies of Watchtower in Top Cut.
That's a good
So
question.
yeah, how many copies? This is kind of the new tech card that came out in the interim. We've seen it a lot online. Do you think that will translate to in tournament success? With how many do you think will be in top cut?
So is this two questions? This is for ASIM, correct? Or
Yeah, I'm
just
gonna say ASIM.
okay? And
Just
then
a
just are you asking for just a raw number? Or are we doing like an over
yeah.
under thing here?
I
Okay.
want a raw number this
So we're
time.
just like price is right, closest to the number of launched
Uh,
hours.
I think you can go over. That's fine. But yeah, closest to it would
Okay.
be the way to win it.
I'll go with 3.
Okay. I'm being honest. I had four in my head, so I'm gonna
Okay.
say
Hey,
four.
go for it.
So all right. Next prediction is how many Canadians will be able to defend their own turf, and how many will be in top cut. So how many Canadians in top cut?
1.
One out of even.
Yep.
Oh, Aaron, that's disrespectful. I
Well, okay. So if you
okay.
go back and look at last year's Toronto Regionals and tell me how many Canadians were in top cut of that one.
I
Spoiler
mean,
alert, it was 1.
I hear you. Um, I just think Canada's in a different plane of existence in the last few months. Like we had a Canadian world champion. We've had,
Okay.
a lot of different Canadians kind of answering the call and doing well. I at least think like if you were to say like how many will be in top eight, maybe one makes sense there. I think for ASIM, I gotta say like three. I think I'm going three. If we had like a 12, I think a good like you gotta remember like over 50, like 50% of the room is probably Canadian, right? So like by that logic, like
I mean, that's
yeah.
true, but I don't think the law of numbers really matters when you get up to the end of the tournament
Oh
because
man.
you
All right,
figure like
Canadian
the vast
fans,
majority of those like
we're
and
losing
the
all the Canadian viewers
that's
are
fine.
clicking off.
I'm gonna spit facts here because this is not just applying to this tournament. This is every tournament in general. Most of the people, especially the majority, like a large majority of people, don't make day 2.
Mhm.
That's where the bulk of those Canadian players will be.
That's true.
And so when you get to day 2, you've got the top 10% of the tournament, and a majority of the top 10% of players in a field at a given tournament are not Canadian. Just look at the history of tournaments over the past 3 seasons. There are a handful of extremely, extremely good Canadian players, but there's still less than 10 of them, I'd think. Maybe there's more. I'd have to sit here and actually name them. It also depends on what nationality you count certain players as.
Sure. Yeah, like
Like
maybe
Piper,
count Piper.
right?
Piper's the one that moved up to Canada for college. Yeah. No, I think she's still U.S. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of good players in Canada at the moment,
There are. Like you obviously you
and they'll
got
show up and try to represent their country. And all that to say, I think yeah, we will. I'll be cheering on some of the Canadian players, and you'll be cheering on non-Canadian players, I assume. So
I like a lot of the Canadian players. I hope they do
yeah,
great.
I
I just
know
don't think they'll make
it's
cut.
all good fun. Fair enough. All right, moving on. Um, two more predictions. Last one before we get into the player we pick. We usually pick a player to do well. My question is the highest placing Mega Evolution Pokemon. So we've seen a couple different decks come to prominence.
Hmm.
Um, Mega Kangaskhan's been running. Golden Ghost now running Lopunny, sometimes running Mega Mawile. Diancie or Mega Gardevoir could make an appearance. Yeah, I think those are the main ones.
You could
So
see
out
a
of all of
sneaky
those
Mega
ones,
Charizard X in the Charizard deck.
true. Yeah, we've seen that a couple times. So that could come up.
Okay.
What are your thoughts, Aaron? Do
I'm
you want
gonna
me to
go.
go first?
No, I'll
Or
go
you?
first. Like I'm gonna go with
Okay.
Lopunny.
Okay, that's the safe one, I think. Yeah.
I do think because I think so. My logic here is Gardevoir has seemed to be trending down on Diancie, so that's out. I think that the Kangaskhan decks just won't make it, and so like, what does that leave you with? It's basically Lopunny. Oh,
Yeah.
what about Sharpedo though? How do you feel about Sharp? We didn't talk about Sharpedo yet. How do you feel about
No,
it?
there's a reason why we didn't talk about Sharpedo. I don't think it's a very good card.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think I'll zig when you zagged. I think that the correct answer probably is low punny, but I think Mega Kangaskhan makes a deep run. Like either it's
It
the
could.
Absol one, the Absol one.
I mean, it could be Absol.
Yeah, it could be Absol, but I'll put Kangaskhan just because I think that it has a larger
Yeah.
stretch and could be included in something like a Terror box or something like that. Just for extra draw. So like it's the most versatile out of them all. Low punny is very specific to Golden Go. I guess the low punting Dust Star deck, we really didn't talk about that either. But
No. It also
yeah,
sees play, like I said, it's seeing play in Zoroark as well. So I think that
yeah.
it's got enough of a foothold that it has a good shot of being up there.
Okay, well that covers all the main predictions. Last one is pick a player to win. Um, I will pick Riley McKay because I think he hasn't played a lot of regionals, but Guardy's still good. And honestly, I think he'll be testing with Henry Chow and all the other Guardy heads, and we'll definitely like come up with the correct answer, if you will. So pick the world champ to defend the hometown regional. That'll be a good story, right?
Hey, that would be a great story. I'm also going to pick a player who has yet to play a major this season, but that I know is attending the tournament this weekend. And this player has a history of winning regional tournaments and winning the invite by doing so. So I don't think this season's going to be any different. I do think at
I know
some
you're
point he's
talking
going to
about.
spike an event here. We're going to go with none other than Azul Garcia Griego.
That's a safe pick.
It is a safe pick, and I know he's going, so it's a
Yeah.
viable pick.
Yeah, true.
Although until he
All right.
he tweets tomorrow, oh,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
canceled my flight.
last minute. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Need to cancel my flight. See you at the next at NAIC.
I'll be
But
co-streaming this weekend. Come tune in.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could
Jeez.
happen. Could happen.
Yeah. I mean, he sounded like he was losing some motivation as he approaches the tournament, which I get. But we will be excitedly talking about that next time. Next week, I'll hopefully have a good recap of my judging experience. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Aaron. I hope you're able to catch some of it on Twitch and follow along at home. Any other thoughts before we head out?
No, just same old, same old. Stay warm, stay safe,
Yeah.
and make sure you have your cards. Like, I mean,
Mm.
take your cards in your carry-on if you're traveling.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, if you're traveling internationally, take your cards on the plane with you. Especially like if you're checking a bag, don't risk it. Just put your deck in your bag. Also, just don't
yeah,
change decks last minute. We say this all the time, but it bears
yeah,
repeating. Right before the first event, it's been a month since the last event. Just be locked in on what you're doing. You've probably been playing the deck you're playing for quite a while at this point. Just stick with it, and you'll see more results that way.
yeah. Good luck.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for tuning into the show. We hope you enjoyed. Sorry for being a bit more inconsistent recently. I know a lot of it is on me. I've had a lot of life stuff going on recently. Just was very near to having an additional child in the household, and that comes with its own set of stresses and potential life problems. So thank you for bearing with us. If you do want to catch the show elsewhere, depending on where you're listening, we put the show out on all podcasting platforms. Our home is considered to be Spotify, so if you'd follow the show there, we would greatly appreciate it. I'm also trying to make sure that I get things uploaded on YouTube as well, so if you would go over there and subscribe, we'll have links to both of those things in the description of the show. You can also follow the show on social media at Battle Frontier Pod on X. You can find myself over there at _Aaron_Curry, and John is over on Blue Sky at johnorgel.bsky.social. So once again, thank you. Enjoy Toronto, whether you're watching the stream or you are up participating in the tournament. And we will see you guys next week on the Battle Frontier.
Have a good week.